Guys, if you thought last week's episode was heavy, wait until you hear what just happened, because Mambokazi had the one chance to end this whole mess with one sentence, and she chose silence instead, and that silence might just be the thing that burns this entire family to the ground. Welcome back to the channel. Make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is on, because today we are unpacking everything that went down in this episode, and trust me, there is a lot to talk about. So let's start right where the drama left us hanging. Zwelakhe has been walking around this family for weeks now with a heavy question sitting on his chest, and that question is simple but it is heavy. Is Mambokazi really his father, or has he been living his entire life under a name that was never truly his? We all remember how this seed was planted, through the Sangoma's warning that kept repeating itself, that his people are looking for him, that the Mambokazi surname might not be the surname that carries his blood. At first it felt like one of those storylines that shows like to drag out for months without giving us anything solid, but this episode actually pushed things forward, and it pushed them forward through Mambokazi, the one person who has always known more than she has ever said out loud. For those catching up, Mambokazi is the one who has carried this secret the longest. She was there when everything happened, she knows exactly who fathered Zwelakhe, and she has watched this young man grow into his role as the heir of the Mambokazi family, the one everyone calls Inkosana, the one who was raised to believe that one day the entire business and everything that comes with the Mambokazi name would be his to protect and to lead. Imagine carrying that kind of secret for that long, watching someone build their whole identity on a foundation that you know is not solid, and still choosing to say nothing. That is exactly what Mambokazi did again in this episode, and honestly, it is becoming harder to watch. The scene where Zwelakhe finally confronts her directly is easily the most emotional moment of the episode. You can see it in his eyes. This isn't a young man asking out of curiosity anymore, this is a grown man who is tired of being handed half-truths and confused looks whenever his father's name comes up in conversation. He sits Mambokazi down and asks her plainly to just tell him the truth, to stop protecting whoever it is she is protecting, and to finally give him something real to hold on to. And what does she do? She looks away. She gives him vague comments about the past being complicated, about certain things being better left buried, about how some truths only cause more pain when they come out. Zwelakhe is not buying it, and honestly, neither are we as viewers, because we have waited long enough for this reveal, and every episode that passes without an answer just adds more fuel to a fire that is clearly about to explode. What makes this even more painful is the timing. This is happening right when the family is trying to hold itself together for the upcoming wedding, and everyone knows that weddings in this family never go smoothly. There is already so much tension simmering under the surface between the Mambokazi household and the Kwababa side of things, and now you are adding a paternity mystery right into the middle of it. It almost feels like the writers are setting up a moment where this secret comes out at the worst possible time, maybe even during the wedding itself, because that is exactly the kind of chaos this show loves to deliver. Let's talk about Kwababa for a second, because his attitude towards Zwelakhe has never made complete sense until you start connecting these dots. There has always been this underlying tension between Kwababa and Zwelakhe that goes beyond normal family friction. Every time they are in a room together, there is this coldness, almost like resentment that Kwababa cannot fully explain but clearly feels. Now, with this paternity question hanging over everything, you start to wonder, is Kwababa reacting to something he already suspects? Does he know more than he lets on? Because it would explain so much about why he has never treated Zwelakhe the way you would expect a family member to be treated, especially one who is supposedly next in line to lead the family business. And speaking of the business, we cannot ignore what is happening on that front either. Kwababa has moved on with his life, he has a new job, his wife helped him secure a position, and it looks like on the surface he is finally stepping away from the family business drama. He is driving one of those Isuzu Bakkies now, moving forward, trying to build something separate from the Mambokazi empire. But here is the thing, and I think a lot of us caught this in the episode, he is still holding on to hope that he will return to the business one day. You can see it in small moments, in the way he talks about the company, in the way he still checks in on decisions being made without him. He has not fully let go, and if Zwelakhe's position as heir gets thrown into question because of this paternity issue, guess who becomes a very convenient replacement? That is right, Kwababa. This storyline is setting up a battle for leadership that goes far beyond just a personal family secret. This is about who controls everything moving forward, and that raises the stakes on Mambokazi's silence even higher. Now let's shift over to Zwelakhe, because her role in all of this cannot be ignored. She is the one who apparently knows about Zwelakhe's background, where he was really raised, and the truth about his history, yet she has been just as unwilling to open up as Mambokazi has. When Zwelakhe goes to her directly, hoping that maybe as his mother figure she would finally give him something solid to work with, she instead turns it around on him, accusing him of not respecting her boundaries, telling him that he needs to stay out of her business. It is such a classic defensive move, right? When someone feels cornered by the truth, they flip the script and make it about the other person's behavior instead of answering the actual question. Zwelakhe is left standing there frustrated, and honestly, we feel that frustration with him. But here is where the episode really picks up the pace, because it looks like Zwelakhe is done waiting around for people to tell him the truth on their own terms. The preview for what is coming suggests that next week, he takes matters into his own hands completely. He is planning to go ahead with a DNA test, and not just quietly on his own, but involving his siblings directly in the process. This is huge, because once that test comes back, there is no more room for vague answers or uncomfortable silences. Science does not care about family loyalty or protecting old secrets, it just gives you the truth in black and white, and from everything we have seen building up in this storyline, it looks like that truth is going to confirm exactly what many of us have suspected for a while now, that Zwelakhe does not share the same father as his siblings. Think about what that means for a second. This isn't just a personal identity crisis for Zwelakhe, this changes everything about inheritance, about leadership, about his entire place within the Mackay's family structure. If he is not actually blood related to the man he has called his father his whole life, does that change his claim to the business? Does that open the door for someone else, maybe Kwababa, maybe someone we have not even considered yet, to step into that leadership role instead? And how does Mackay's himself, if he even finds out, react to learning that the son he has been grooming to take over everything might not be his biological child at all? These are the kinds of questions this episode leaves us with, and honestly, that is exactly why this show keeps pulling us back in every single week. Let's also touch on the Mambokazi storyline, because even though it feels separate from the Zwelakhe paternity drama at first glance, I think there is a connection brewing here too. Mambokazi has always struggled with standing up for himself, especially when it comes to his father Dumasane. In this episode, we see that pattern continue, where Mambokazi once again lets his father convince him to hand over important documents that could affect the children's future and the family's assets. What is frustrating about this storyline is that Mambokazi clearly knows deep down that something is not right about how easily his father manipulates him, yet he keeps falling into the same trap every single time. He sneaks into his father's space trying to look for answers on his own, gets caught in the act, and has to rush to cover his tracks. It is almost sad to watch, because you can see the potential for him to grow into someone stronger, but every episode he keeps getting pulled back into being his father's puppet. And this connects to the bigger picture because Dumasane's wife has had enough of watching her husband run the household without any real partnership or respect for her voice. She feels invisible in her own marriage, she feels like every decision gets made by Dumasane and enforced through Mambokazi, and in this episode she finally reaches her breaking point and steps away, needing space to breathe outside of that toxic environment. She even calls Mambokazi out directly, telling him that he never defends her, that he behaves like nothing more than his father's obedient pet instead of a husband and a man with his own voice. That line hit hard, honestly, because it is such an accurate description of what we have been watching play out for weeks now. Now with all of this tension building on multiple fronts, the families are trying to find a way to sit down together and smooth things over, especially with the wedding coming up. There is talk of a meeting between the two households, but given everything simmering under the surface, from Zwelakhe's paternity questions to Mloba's manipulation storyline to the lingering resentment between Kwab and the rest of the family, it is hard to imagine that meeting going smoothly. If anything, based on how this show usually handles these moments, that meeting is more likely to become the spark that sets off even bigger confrontations rather than actually solving anything. What really stands out to me about this episode is how it uses silence as its most powerful storytelling tool. Mambokazi's silence, Slindail's silence, even Mloba's silence when it comes to standing up to his father, all of these silences are doing more damage than any single argument could. It is a reminder of how avoiding hard conversations, even when you think you are protecting someone, usually ends up causing more pain in the long run. Zwelakhe deserves the truth about his own identity, and the fact that the people closest to him keep choosing to protect old secrets over his right to know where he actually comes from says a lot about the culture of secrecy this family has built over the years. So where does this leave us heading into next week? All eyes are going to be on that DNA test. This is the moment the show has clearly been building toward for a while now, and based on everything we have picked up through hints, Sangoma warnings, and inconsistent stories from Mambokazi and Slindail, it feels almost certain that the results are going to confirm that Zwelakhe is not biologically a Mambokazi. The real question now becomes, how does the family handle that truth once it is out in the open, and more importantly, how does Zwelakhe himself handle discovering that his entire identity has been built on a story that was never fully honest? I also want to point out how well the show is using Kwab's return as a possible parallel storyline here. If the company starts struggling without strong, unified leadership, especially with Zwelakhe's position potentially thrown into chaos, it would not be surprising to see the family eventually reach out to Kwab to come back and help stabilize things. That would create such an interesting dynamic, watching Kwab step back into a business he clearly never fully let go of emotionally, all while Zwelakhe is dealing with the biggest identity crisis of his life. The writers are clearly setting up multiple pieces on this board, and it feels like everything is about to collide at once. Before we wrap up, let's talk quickly about the emotional weight this episode places on Zwelakhe specifically, because I think it is easy to get caught up in the mystery and the family politics and forget that at the center of all of this is a person whose sense of self is being shaken. He has spent his whole life being told who he is, being groomed for a role, being given a name and an identity, and now he is being forced to question all of it because the people who should have been honest with him from the start kept choosing silence instead. That is a heavy thing to carry, and I think the performances in this episode really captured that internal struggle well, especially in the scene with Mambokazi where you can see him trying so hard to stay calm while clearly being on the verge of breaking down from frustration. So that is our full breakdown of this episode. Mambokazi had her moment to finally tell Zwelakhe the truth about his real father, and once again she chose to protect the secret instead of protecting him. Slindail continues to dodge the same question. Kwab's resentment starts making a lot more sense the more the storyline unfolds, and Mloba is still stuck being manipulated by his father while his marriage falls apart around him. Next week's DNA test looks like it is going to be the turning point this whole story has been building toward, and I genuinely cannot wait to see how the family reacts once the truth is finally impossible to hide. Let me know in the comments what you think is really going on. Do you believe Kwab already knows the truth about Zwelakhe, and do you think Mambokazi himself has any idea what is coming? Drop your predictions below. Give this video a like if you enjoyed today's breakdown, and subscribe if you have not already so you do not miss next week's review when all of this finally comes to a head. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.